Natural consequences are those that are not imposed by any authority. There are many instances when allowing the natural consequences of your child's behavior to occur is the best method of learning. If your son doesn't eat his lunch now, he'll be hungry later. If your daughter doesn't study, she won't pass the test. If your youngest doesn't keep AC average, the coach won't allow him on the team. By allowing consequences to occur, you make your child responsible for his own actions. You are not the bad guy who nags, punishes, and berates. You can even be sympathetic and supportive, but your child gets the point. Bad things happen when he acts in certain ways. By preventing the consequences from occurring, you keep your child from learning and remove all incentive for behavioral change. Sometimes it is not reasonable to allow certain consequences to occur. You can't risk that your child will learn by natural consequences to stay out of the street or not to play with matches. The lesson might be fatal. For these and other situations where natural consequences should not occur, you need to create consequences for misbehavior. The following rules will help you create effective and fair consequences. 1. Consequences should be reasonable. Match the severity of the consequence to the importance of the offense. If your child is a half hour late coming home, a reasonable consequence is 305. Self-esteem. That he has to be a half hour early tomorrow. It is not reasonable that he be grounded for a week. The consequences should be related to the event. If your son leaves his bike out in the rain, the consequence will be more effective if it relates to his use of the bike, rather than to his use of the phone. When Dave did the dishes, he did them so poorly they had to be rewashed. His mom reacted by no longer asking him to do the dishes at all. Dave learned that the consequence of doing a poor job was to get out of doing it altogether. Why should he ever improve his dishwashing skill, when his mom made him rewash the dishes himself? Dave's dishwashing technique quickly became flawless. Consequences should occur close in time to the events. Limit TV on the same night your child loses his jacket, not a week later. By then the consequence will seem too arbitrary and unfair. Consequences should be enforced consistently. This is proba. Bly, the hardest rule, but the most essential. If your children know that you are not consistent, they won't be motivated to change their behavior. If your son is running around in a restaurant, be clear that you will leave. Then do it. You'll probably only have to go through this inconvenience once before the behavior ceases to be a problem. Resolve to be consistent even when you are tired, even when grandparents are visiting, even when you are on the phone. Choosing reasonable consequences in advance, when you are calm and not angry, will make it easier to be consistent. Consequences should be understood in advance by both you and your children. They can then take responsibility for their actions, and you are relieved of the pressure to create reasonable consequences when you are stressed or angry. 8-year-old Len had been told many times not to play ball close to the house lest he break a window. When his mother heard the unmistakable sound of broken glass, she was furious. If she had had to create a consequence on the spot, she might have threatened to take that bat away for good. But Len had been told in advance that if he broke a window he would be expected to pay for it from his allowance. If his allowance was not sufficient, he would have to earn the extra money by doing chores on the weekend. Len didn't. 306. Building self-esteem in children. Have to argue or explain, and his mother didn't have to nag or threaten. Allowing your children to experience the consequences of their acts teaches them to take responsibility for what they do. Taking that responsibility builds self-esteem because it gives them control. They are not attacked or berated, and they don't have to feel guilty. Their relationship with you is not on the line. You accept them and care about them even though they have made a mistake. Autonomy. Nancy was talking about how she felt when leaving the hospital with her new baby. I remember feeling overwhelmed with the responsibility. The baby seemed so vulnerable, and there were so many dangers. Even the sound of the cars on the street seemed too loud, too close. How are we going to provide for his needs, keep him safe, keep him alive? He was totally dependent on us. Frank talks about his 18-year-old daughter going away to college for the first time. I look at her and see a young woman starting out in life. Sure, for the past 18 years she's had the security and support of a father who loves her, but the lessons she needs to learn now are the ones I can't teach her. She needs to learn to get along with others, schedule her time, budget her money, take care of herself. I know she's capable of living on her own, but she needs to do it in order to prove it. I'll be the safety net for the next few years, but she's the one on the high wire. Teaching kids the skills and knowledge they need to leave the nest is the basic task of parenting. You want them to be capable of caring for themselves and sufficiently confident to meet challenges. You want them to fit in socially, but not lose their sense of identity, to be generous enough to give and trusting enough to take in relationships. Somehow, during the intervening years between first holding your fragile infant and watching him pack up to move away, your child achieves autonomy. And a sense of autonomy is essential for good self-esteem. If you spend some time with toddlers, you see the innate drive to achieve autonomy in its rawest form. You see their incredible drive to learn and master skills both physical and intellectual. They'll climb, reach, touch, and taste any new object in their environment. They'll struggle to acquire language, and then use their first words, no, being most important, to begin affecting their world. 307. Self-esteem. The process of promoting a child's autonomy is continuous. You provide a balance between the opportunity to explore and the security of your protection. This balance between safety and growth is constantly changing, but despite the fluctuations, the trend is always toward autonomy. It's like watching the tide come in. Not every wave comes closer to you than the last, but in an hour's time. You can see that there's less beach and more ocean, and it's time to move the blanket or you'll soon be wet. As your children grow, by providing more challenges, allowing more choices, and expecting more responsibility, you function as a positive mirror in building their self-esteem. You trust them, you believe them capable. Your approval of their drive toward autonomy assures them that it is safe to grow up and grow away. Promoting confidence. 1. Teach skills necessary for independence. From tying their shoes and dressing themselves to helping fix the car and cook a dinner. 1. Teach skills necessary for independence. From tying their shoes and dressing themselves to helping fix the car and cook a dinner, everything your children learn that helps them function independently will increase their confidence that they are competent and can make it in the world. 2. Keep track of their history. Just as you measure your daughter's physical stature on a growth chart on the wall, keep track of her progress in other areas. Remind her how much more capable, more skillful, more understanding, more adventure else she is compared to last year or last month. That's how she learns to recognize and trust her developing skills. 3. Give your child responsibilities in the family. No matter how young a child is, it is a great boost to self-esteem to feel that he can make a contribution to the family. Young children can set the table, pick up toys, turn on the garden hose, or put water out for the dog. Young children can set the table, pick up toys, turn on the garden hose, or put water out for the dog. Older children can assume responsibility for a whole project, from assessing what is needed to taking charge of how it is to be done. Of course, in the beginning, Knowing it is often easier and faster and neater to do things yourself, but your children will never learn important skills. More importantly, they'll be cheated out of the self-esteem enhancing experience of being needed and having their efforts recognized and appreciated. 308. Building self-esteem in children. Promoting a feeling of success. When a child tries something new and faces a challenge successfully, his self-esteem grows. You can help your children have the courage to try new experiences by providing these 4 conditions. 1. Let a child know what to expect. A young child's first trip to the dentist can go more smoothly if he knows what the office looks like, what the dentist is, what it might feel like, how long it will take, where you will be, and so on. You might practice at home by sitting the child on a high chair and holding a pretend mirror on a stick. A child prepared in this way can look forward to a new experience. Many potentially scary or intimidating events can be turned into adventures by making sure your child knows what will happen. 2. Let your child practice the necessary skills. 10-year-old Ethan wanted to help his dad paint a dresser, but in a few minutes, Ethan and the brushes were swimming in paint. His dad felt irritated and started barking commands and suggestions at Ethan. Don't dip the brush so deeply in the paint. Use the drop cloth. Watch your shoes. Don't touch that. Curtain. Defeated, Ethan tried to clean up in the bathroom, where he managed to smear paint on the sink, rug, and towels. Now both his parents were disgusted with him. What started out as an adventure ended up as a disaster. The chance that Ethan could have successfully helped his dad would have been greater if he had first practiced such necessary skills as putting just the tip of the brush in the can, wiping off the excess, moving the drop cloth, and brushing smoothly to avoid splattering. 3. Be patient. When possible, allow sufficient time for a child to go slowly while trying something new. Your son might need time to check out the new environment and people before he feels comfortable enough to join the kids in a karate class. He might need to get the feel of a new bike before he takes off down the street. Pressure to perform before he's ready will make him shy away from new challenges. 4. Make it safe to fail. The fact that your child is trying something new means that he is already successful. He has succeeded in accepting a challenge. If a child doesn't feel pressure to do something well the very first time that he tries it, then he is more likely to accept a challenge or try again until he masters. 309. Self-esteem. By praising your child's willingness to try, rather than the result of a first attempt, his self-esteem will be nourished. Promoting success in school. The lessons learned at school are not just reading and math skills or knowledge of history and science. When children are able to finish assignments on time, with reasonable neatness and care, they learn some very important life skills. They learn to organize, plan ahead, follow through, and exercise some self-control. Reasonable grades also support self-esteem. Your son sees stars and smiling faces at the top of his homework papers, that his teacher is pleased and friendly towards him, and that other children see him as competent. The child who is allowed to continue to do poorly in school faces daily assaults on his self-esteem. Poor grades, disapproval from the teacher, and even social ostracism are the painful burdens that he bears. A child's self-esteem can take a beating as he falls further and further behind. Of course, there are many reasons why children do poorly in school. Your son may have difficulty seeing or hearing the teacher, or he may have a learning disability, aphasia, dyslexia, hyperactivity. Your daughter may be bored because she's not challenged or frustrated because she can't keep up. Or she may be distracted by friends who sit nearby. Whatever the problem, you need to deal with it early in a child's school career, before he begins to think of himself as a failure, and before he suffers years of disapproval from frustrated teachers. Check it out. Check with your child first. Have your son tell you what he sees as the problem and what he thinks is needed to solve it. Check with his teachers. From them you'll learn about any problems before they get out of hand, and you'll also let the teachers know that you're an interested parent and your child is trying. Look at parent-teacher conferences as an exchange of information. The teacher needs to know if there is some situation at home that's affecting your child, the birth of a sibling, a recent move, the death of a grandparent or a pet, a family illness or a marital problem. You need to know what is expected of your child and how well he is meeting those expectations. Listen to how the teacher perceives the problem. Does her perception sound reasonable? Is your son restless or distractible? Does he fail to finish assignments? Does he forget his books? Does he work too slowly or freeze up during exams? Look at his tests, his artwork, his desk, and his notes. Ask about his friendships and participation. 310. Building self-esteem in children. In class, try to get a sense of what your child's experience in school is. Don't leave until you have a good idea about what the problem is and have agreed on a plan to solve it. Follow up by checking back in a few weeks to see if there is any improvement. Marco was a bright but often bored 4th grader. When his math grades fell from his usual A's to C's, Marco's father asked him what he thought the problem was. Marco claimed that he understood the math, but thought it was stupid and boring. His father had a conference with the teacher. Once his father saw his son's math tests and worksheets, he could see where the problem was. Marco's handwriting was so sloppy that his 7s looked like 9s and his 5s looked like 8s. Some mistakes were clearly due to transcribing the numbers incorrectly. The teacher pointed out that in working word problems Marco seemed to understand how the problems were done, but would skip certain steps. They agreed that the father would check Marco's homework each night for accuracy and legibility. He would also check that Marco didn't skip steps when solving word problems. Marco's teacher agreed with the father that Marco might be bored in math. She therefore began saving some fun math games for him to work on after he finished his regular assignments. This simple intervention got Marco back on track, and his math grades improved. More importantly, his self-esteem improved as well. He was getting positive feedback from his teacher for improved handwriting, plus he was given extra attention in the challenge of math games. You and the teacher should be partners in helping your child do well, feel good about himself, and be successful in school. If you feel that the teacher has labeled and dismissed your child as a slow learner, hopeless, a wall climber, a troublemaker, and the like, and that she is not willing to work with you in a positive way, try to have your child move to another class. Promoting social skills. Let your children spend time with other children. Social skills are only learned through practice. Kids need to learn to share, take turns, cooperate and negotiate. They learn how to get along and predict how others will react to them. They need other kids to practice how to handle their anger, how to compromise, how to get their own way. Getting along with peers is a very different skill from getting along with adults, and the social lessons of childhood are essential for a child to be successful socially, as a teen and as an adult. 311. Self-esteem. For very young children, playgroups or nursery school, even for a few mornings a week, are valuable. Encourage after-school activities where kids learn to enjoy team spirit and companionship. Encourage their friends to visit your home and let your child visit others after school. Take a friend along on an outing. Exclusive one-on-one contact during a trip can cement a friendship which might carry over to the school environment. This is an especially helpful opportunity for shy children. Be aware of the tremendous pressure your children are under to be like other kids. From riding their bike in the street to dating and curfew restrictions, kids are going to want to do what everybody else is doing. What everybody else is doing will be different in different communities, and will almost certainly be different from your expectations, hairstyle, dress style, and music are classic battlegrounds for family conflict during adolescence. But being part of a group identified by distinctive style and philosophy gives teens a ready-made identity and the safety of the group while they struggle to find out who they are and what they want. As a parent, you are faced with a delicate balance between accepting their need to establish an independent identity and firmly setting limits in areas that relate to your child's physical and psychological safety. If your child has enough experience and feels confident socially, he will have a better chance to resist the pressures to go along with the crowd when going along exposes him to danger. Modeling self-esteem. Children learn to value themselves by the example you set. When you have the self-esteem to forgive yourself, they learn to forgive themselves. When you talk about your appearance and behavior with acceptance, they learn to do the same. When you have the self-esteem to set limits and protect yourself, kids When you have the self-esteem to set limits and protect yourself, kids model on your example. They learn to set limits and protect themselves as well. Modeling self-esteem means valuing yourself enough to take care of your own basic needs. When you put yourself last, when you chronically sacrifice for your kids, you teach them that a person is only worthy insofar as he or she is of service to others. You teach them to use you and make it likely that later on they will be used. Setting consistent, supportive limits and protecting yourself from overbearing demands sends a message to your child that both of you are important and both of you have legitimate needs. You show your 312. Building self-esteem in children. Son or daughter that each person in a relationship has value and that a balance must be struck to meet the important needs of each one. The martyr myth. The image of the self-sacrificing parent is often held up as an ideal. The good father gives all for the children no matter what the cost. The good mother never takes a break and has no outside friendships or activities. The good parents have needs that can be ignored, delayed, and forgotten. Is this the ideal? In fact, the opposite is true. Overstressed and overextended. Parents are often irritable, resentful, and depressed. Just as you can't keep driving a car without ever stepping on the gas, you can't keep giving to kids without ever refueling emotionally. Taking care of yourself provides you with the capacity for taking care of your children. An afternoon out with friends for lunch, an evening dinner. Out with your husband or wife, a weekly exercise class, or even an hour alone in the tub with a good book can enable you to return to your parenting job with more energy, interest, and patience. 313. Bibliography. Barksdale, Lilburn S. Building.